All right. Good morning, world. I'm Glenn Clark from Crafting a Brand. Scott?
Good morning. I'm Scott Kolbe from Market Your Craft.
All right. Andrew says in the chat, a ton of people are already here. I don't know what a ton is, but thank you all for being here. Thank you for your time and your attention this morning. We're going to co-present about pandemic marketing and branding tactics. We're going to talk about two different things. I'm going to talk about branding. Scott's going to talk about marketing. We're going to describe how they're different and how you should think about each of them differently to tell the world about your brewery. So we're going to start with branding. There's couple things I want you to take away from this session. Number one, I want you to understand that you're going to work on your brand first and your marketing second. Whether you're a brewery in planning or you've been around for 10 years, I want you to think about branding first and marketing second. We'll talk about that. Marketing is all the different ways that you tell people about your brand. And I want you to know that a strong brand is the foundation of a healthy brewery that will evolve and grow into the future. So I do not believe there are very few breweries that survive on beer alone. Those that endure and last and draw people back year after year have worked not only on their liquid, but they've thought about their brand. At the end of this session, I've got 15 minutes, so I'm probably going to speed it up here and give Scott his 15 minutes. At the end of this session, you'll have new ideas. I've got 4 different workshop tools for you to take back to your team that I believe, if implemented and used time and time again on a regular basis, it can fundamentally change how you operate your business. The result of all of this, I want you to know that you and your team can and should deliberately shape how customers feel when they hear your brewery's name. And if you think about some of your favorite breweries or beer brands out there, don't they all bring a specific feeling to you, right? Don't you think of certain things? You need to do that for your brewery. You need to shape how people are going to feel. A 3-step process, how to tell the world about your brewery. We start at number 1 at the bottom, the foundation. Build the foundation for success. You do that by working on your brand strategy and planning. Number 2, you bring your brand to life through all of your creative services, all of the things that you put out in the world. Number 3, which Scott's going to talk about, then you tell the world about your brand through marketing and promotion. 1, build a foundation. 2, build your creative's assets to tell your story, to put in front of consumers. 3, all the different ways that you can get in touch with your consumers. I think every brewery has a great story, but not all of you tell the right story. A lot of breweries, inadvertently, they tell the wrong story. I'll give you an example of that. I live in a small town called Honeoye Falls. You probably can't spell that. Honeoye Falls in upstate New York, in the Finger Lakes region of New York. Very quaint little small town. Norman Rockwell, Americana. I had an office right here on Main Street when I started my business back in 2003. And I was walking to work one day and I saw some activity going on in a storefront. Walked in, introduced myself, told him what I did. I'm a designer, marketer, storyteller. He said, "That's fantastic. I just had my logo designed. Would you give me your opinion about my logo?" So he went out back. He brought it to me. It was covered up back in the day. Piece of foam core with a black cover sheet over the top of it. I could tell that no matter what I could tell that what he was about to show me, he absolutely loved this logo. Okay, so I want you to think about this when I show you this logo in the context of this quaint, old-fashioned, old-timey town. And I want you to think about the name of it. This was his logo. The Main Street Coffee Shop. And he showed it to me with a big smile and he said, "What do you think?" Obviously, I had some issues with it. I had issues with the name right? Don't we want to name our business? Don't we want to name our coffee shop or brewery something that's unique and memorable and stands out and makes me think that this is unlike any other brewery or coffee shop? Main Street Coffee Shop. I think every Main Street has one. So his name didn't help him at all. His logo, the design, the colors, the typefaces, look and feel, really some awful things happening here. There were issues with it. The name would inspire no one. Every town has a Main Street Coffee Shop. The visual aesthetic, design matters. Devalued the organization. So now what? I didn't want to insult him. I said, tell me how you got here. How did you get to Main Street Coffee Shop? He said, that's a great question. He said, you know, my wife and I, we have a small working organic farm on the outside of town. We're into farm to table. My wife has written a book on sustainable farming. She's on the Governor's Tourism Council. She's an expert in this space. We're going to serve gourmet coffees from around the world. We've got a chef coming in to make these delicious sandwiches. This is our menu. We've got all sorts of really delicious handcrafted artisan foods. We've even got dairy from our 2 cows. We're going to serve dairy from our 2 cows at the Main Street Coffee Shop. That doesn't tell that story, does it? He's got something much more interesting going on. So I helped him tell the right story, and I want to think about your story. He wasn't the Main Street Coffee Shop. He was 2 Cows Coffee and Farm Market. And that's how he put his brand out to the world. That's how he told his story. Are you telling the right story about your brewery? What was right about 2 Cows instead of Main Street Coffee Shop? It's unique. It was visually distinct. It's easy to spell, pronounce, remember, and repeat. People noticed it. They were excited to be a part of it. Is this happening with your brand? So I'm not suggesting that you go back and rebrand or rename your brewery. You might be in a position to do that. That's not my point, but I want you to think about how you're putting yourself out there to the world. People will spend more money on great brands, right? Who remembers when you needed a glass of water? Some of you might remember 25, 30 years ago, you went to the faucet and got a glass of water. If you want water now, right? How much we'll pay $1, we'll pay $2.50 for some of that water. It's all the same thing. Look at what branding and telling a story can do to something as ubiquitous as water, right? I've got a terrible headache. I'll pay $1.99 for that, but I'll pay $3.99 for that. It's the same thing. Why did we spend more on this? Because they invested in their brand. You too have to invest in your brand. What is a brand? We think about, let's look at coffee, essentially the same thing. Starbucks, Maxwell House, Dunkin' Donuts all sell the same liquid. But if I asked you all to write down 3 things about Starbucks and 3 things about Dunkin' Donuts, and we polled one another, guess what? We'd all probably write about the same things because they've done a great job at branding and telling their story in a consistent way over and over and over again. The same thing can happen with beer, right? If we polled one another, we'd all come up with similar descriptions about each of these beers without ever talking to one another, because they've invested in their brand and they've thought about how they put themselves out to the world. Jeff Bezos of Amazon says your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. Ouch. Imagine if you heard what other people said about you when you left the room. Hopefully it's good. In every case, it's not. So great brands know and shape what they want people to say about their brands. People remember how a brand makes them feel. Right? Now we're getting into the heart and soul of the matter, which is really what branding is all about. Great brands know and shape what they want people to feel about their brands. Can people describe your beers as easily as they can describe these 3 brands? I would ask you. Do people have feelings about your beer the way they have feelings about these? That's what you have to do to endure and to be around 5 and 10 years from now. You have to create a brand that people understand. Your goal is to make your beer brand easy to describe and have a distinct personality, as these brands have done so well. Some people think a brand is a logo. Logos are important. That's the first thing that some people see. But look at this. We're going to do this brand touchpoint wheel as one of our exercises. These are all the different ways, and you can fill in your own. These are all the different ways that you leave an impression on consumers. When somebody walks into your tap room, what kind of greeting do they have? What are your price points? What's your driveway and the exterior condition of your brewery like? What's your takeout process like? What's your website experience like? How do you act and talk, and how often are you on social media? Your labels, the type of music being played, so on and so forth. We're going to do this exercise here. It's a takeout exercise. So here are 4. And I would add, don't expect consumers to love your brand if you don't do the work to make them love it. This is not automatic. Number 1, shape the perceptions. And please take a screen grab, or I think Andrew may send this slide to you. Write down 3 things with your team, people you want people to say about your brand. Write down 3 things you want people to feel about your brand. Poll your customers. There's a lot of ways to do that. And learn how close or far your customers say you are to your goals. And then put actions in place to change course or improve. I want you to have branding meetings every month with your team, and bring in coffee or pizza or beer or something like that. And I want you to get together with your team every month and do this. Create your own brand touchpoint wheel. There's a blank one. Take a picture if you'd like. Fill in the blanks with the consumer touchpoints that are relevant to your brewery. Determine specific ways to optimize and improve each of those touch points. Write them down and assign them to specific employees. Joe, you're in charge of music. Mary, you're in charge of greetings. Bob, you're in charge of educating the beer tenders about the beers, so on and so forth. Again, revisit at whenever it is, every other Monday, once a month, twice a month, team meeting, and measure your improvement. Number 3, your one unique thing. Draw a circle on a map and identify all the breweries within an hour. Write down the one most important thing that they're known for it. I call it a differentiating characteristic. How are they different? Write down your differentiating characteristic and determine what your one unique thing is. This is difficult. This can be hard to do. If you don't have one of these, you need to have a one unique thing. And I want you to think about big picture. How will your story end? Ask yourself these important questions. Why did you start your brewery? What are you proud of? What do you need to work on? How is your brewery different? And how does your story end? These are the big picture questions that we lose sight of when we get caught up in the day-to-day, because we're all so busy making beer and running our brewery. 5 things I want you to do. Figure out your one unique thing. Host monthly brand building meetings. Be even more local, connect, communicate, and show even more love than you are now to your community, because that's where customers are right now. Invest time, money, and at least one person to make your website and social channels come alive every day. Number 5, don't go it alone. Join your beer guild, your chamber of commerce, and regional tourism organizations. I'm about to wrap it up here. Remember these 2 things. Number 1, your long-term success relies entirely on your ability to make a lasting impression on customers. It is not just your beer. Beer is one. More importantly than that, for long-term success, is you need to figure out how to make a lasting impression. Breweries that do the deliberate work to build a brand that consumers love, it doesn't happen automatically, will achieve a higher degree of success and longevity. I'm going to turn over Scott here in about 30 seconds. He's going to talk about all the different ways, and there are more, all the different ways you can reach out and touch your customers. I hope Most of you know who that is. In 2021, if you build a brewery, they will come. If you open a brewery, people will come. However, right? But they won't keep coming back year after year if you don't give them reasons to. That's what we call marketing. Scott.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Glenn. So, like Glenn said, there are countless ways to tell your story. And what we hope to do is help you prioritize on those that are going to help you drive traffic to your brewery and build engagement and capture those new sales, both today and post-COVID. We're going to use the filter of, does the media answer the question, what business are you in and why should I care? This is what the customer is asking right now. This is what the customer needs. It's a level of transparency that we as marketers and you, of course, as breweries, probably haven't experienced up until the last year, at least with this intensity. We learned a lot during COVID-19, and we're still right in the middle of it. We talk differently to each other. Who would have thought that phrases like meet, Zoom, social distancing, essential, frontline, and vaccine availability and eligibility would be so commonplace in our vernacular, our conversations nowadays. As a brand, as a brewery, content is more important than ever. So we've got a couple lessons for you. We really want you to understand your customer. That's your target customer and your current customer. Joe sitting at the corner of the bar, as well as 3 times that number of customers that hopefully you'll have post-pandemic. Tell your stories visually. Reflect the personality and the tone of the brand in a real, transparent, and authentic way. Bring your products to life. Like Glenn said, it's not just the product selling itself anymore. It's the story behind it. You don't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a completely staged product shot every single time. People want to see the raw you. Give them exposure, give them access to that. And then celebrate the team and the community. These are the people that make it happen every single day. And the community has allowed you to do business. Respect them and recognize them for that. You're trying to answer the question of why should I visit the brewery? This is another key focus point for marketing. If somebody hasn't been to your space yet, then you really want them to see in advance what they're getting into, especially during times of COVID, where states have varying levels of being open or closed. We have guidelines and best practices, procedures that we're following. Show them this before they visit. You're going to get more traffic that way and definitely engagement. Create photo-worthy settings in your brewery, your tasting room, the tours that you offer. Make sure that at least right now, your COVID procedures are very clear on your website. If you have events that are going on, whether those are live or online events, double down on adding content to your events calendar. Make sure they know what they have to look forward to when they visit. And then there's always giving the gift of craft beer, whether that's in the form of a voucher or a buy a headboard that might be behind the taps. Talking a little bit more about video, we love the idea of virtual tours, first-person walkthroughs, giving them, again, an idea of the space. If you've got curbside or pickup delivery options, highlight those on your website, your social channels. Really celebrate your production team. Again, these are the folks, along with the beer tenders and the front room staff, these are the folks that are really on the front line for your business. They're the face of your brewery. Capture the packaging process. This is all very interesting to people. And again, exposes the real you. If you're adding on or if you're building out a patio, show me. The transparency that you show right now is going to earn the customer trust, especially after COVID. Take the time to take an objective look at your operations. There are certain functions and services that sprung up during COVID that we never thought we had access to before. Shipping in some states, reservation systems, capacity, things like this. Which of these services are we really going to carry forward as best practices post-COVID? Which services have become expectations for guests? And quite frankly, best practices for safety and service, festival participation, whether that's in person, if it's virtual competitions. What's your schedule look like? How comfortable do you and your brewing team feel about going back in 100%? And always respect the front line. The folks who in the medical profession and otherwise who really put it out the entire year, we need to continue to recognize them. It's not just a COVID thing. Lastly, customer service is vital. People are hypersensitive right now. And so we have to be sensitive to that. And in our communications, both socially and online, take a step back, look at it from the perspective of someone on the outside of your brewery, and really understand how your message would land with them before you publish it. Make some common responses to the FAQs, the issues that might come up, questions that might come up. And then, as you always do, try to de-escalate. The in-person is the most obvious, but you also want to de-escalate the digital situations as well. The last thing that you need is a negative story to go viral. And speaking of digital, now is the time. Now is the time for some house cleaning, right? Double down on your digital efforts. Collect as much photography as you can now while you have the chance. This will give you the opportunity to really hit the ground running post-COVID with a solid calendar of content. If it's not already open, I would ask why, but open that online storefront. Make sure that you're selling through all the channels possible. Push the limits in this area and refresh your website. It's time. People have been online for the last year, and if they've been engaging with your brand, they're likely seeing the same old. Spruce it up a little bit. And now is the time to test because, like I said before, we'd like every brewery to find 3 new customers for every existing one. This is in order to be viable and sustainable in the future. So test different efforts to try and reach new audiences, whether that's publishing new content out there, boosting social posts, doing amount of advertising, put a little bit of money behind it, Google AdWords and such. This is low-hanging fruit. It's not a ton of investment, but the return is exponential. We love public relations, and we feel like most breweries don't take full advantage of it. There's really an opportunity to use public relations as an engine to get your story out there on a regular basis, not only with the industry, but the people who follow those industry publications. Show your support of the community. Again, this is something that the consumers are craving nowadays. Highlight the wins, whether that's new product releases or opening up a new patio space, 100% capacity allowed in your brewery. Design a press release, have it in your back pocket, know your media-friendly contacts in your area and your broader area. Distribute those press releases on a regular basis and then track them, learn from it, optimize your communications afterwards. But remember that these press releases, as well as posts and other content, serve as valuable stories on your website, so archive them. It also makes you more discoverable by Google. Our goal throughout this entire presentation was to give you the tools to drive traffic, build engagement, and capture new sales, not only today, but well beyond COVID? Glenn?
All right. If you enjoyed the content in my branding session, I publish a beer, actually a beverage related e-newsletter every Thursday. Please feel free to subscribe at www.threethingseverythursday.com. And I've got about 2,000 subscribers across the country, and it goes out every Thursday. Actually, when you get there, you'll see that there's a morning and an evening edition, but I won't confuse you. You have two choices, and I would be grateful for your subscription at threethingseverythursday.com.
Well, Glenn's newsletters are great, chock full of information. We have emails, we have guides, we have a team of storytelling experts that are really ready to help you market your craft. The idea has always been that breweries deserve more traffic. They deserve social and other engagement. And best of all, they deserve the sales. So Glenn and I are here to answer any questions that you might have. And we hope that you found value in this presentation today.
All right, light it up. Nobody wants to ask the first question.
Glenn, I'll ask you the first question.
Go for it.
So if I were a new or existing brewery and I just don't feel comfortable that my brand is strong enough, would you have a suggestion on what I might do with you or as an exercise by myself to truly identify who I am as a brand?
Yeah, I would. I have a slide that I can share with anyone. I don't think I can share it at this moment. It's called Brand Building Blocks. And actually, I'm gonna see if I can just cheat real quick and look at that on my screen here. I have a process to do just that.
Well, and while Glenn's pulling that up, I understand from Andrew that we can post our presentation materials on the Facebook group.
Okay,
so we'll definitely do that post-presentation.
Yeah, so if I need to figure out what I'm all about, I use a process called Brand Building Blocks. I'll share that afterwards. So here's what you want to define. Your target audience, right? Not who do you most want to, or who's most likely to visit your brewery, right? So your target audience is not the entire world. You can't possibly serve the entire world. Who then do you want to serve? Who do you want to appeal to? So identify target audience, identify value proposition. What do I get? What's the benefit to me if I come visit your brewery? Okay, did I have a beer that I've never had before? Do I have do I get better service than anywhere else? Am I the music brewery? Am I the outdoor brewery? Am I the family friendly brewery? So what value does a customer get? Figure that out. Your differentiating characteristics kind of go hand in hand with your value. How are you different? Right? That's where we put a pin on a map and look at all the breweries within a 1 hour drive. You need to figure out how you're different. Number 4, your positioning statement. Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts have positioned themselves in a different place in our brain. How do you want to position your brewery? Number 5 is your brand personality. If your brand was a person, what would he or she look like, sound like, dress like, right? Are you the goth brewery? Everything is in black. Are you the hipster brewery? Are you the baby boomer brewery? Are you a funny brewery? Are you a serious brewery? So figure out your brand personality, your one thing, right? That's the 6th brand building block. What is your one thing that you are known for or known as? Those are the 6 questions that I ask. I actually work with breweries. I have a workshop process for this, but you can do it on your own. You don't need me. And I'll share that. Target audience, value prop, how you're different, how you position yourself, your brand personality, and your one thing. There's my answer, Scott. Sorry, it was a long one.
Now, I think I would be the goth brewery personally
Yeah.
in that scenario. You can see that, right, Glenn?
Yeah, that's right. Oh, man.
We've got a couple of questions coming in. I'll read them off and we'll split them up. The first one was from Blind Man Brewing, and that was, when our customers are bombarded with social, do you ever feel it is necessary or helpful to limit a brewery's social media presence? Less but more effective posts. I can take a quick stab at that, and then I'd love your take on it, Glenn. So my suggestion would be there's no single template or formula for volume of content on social. You really benefit from listening to the customers, seeing how much they engage with particular content. And at some point, there's a fatigue factor. It's almost a burnout where your current fans and followers feel like they're being marketed to. And so if you were to look at a tool like Sprout Social or Hootsuite or another tool that would help monitor and listen to not only your own social media posts, but those of your competitors and peers, you start to see a decrease or a decline or a plateau month over month. And that's when you really have to ask the question, okay, is my content fresh enough or am I messaging them too much? And then I would only add, if you're messaging them too much, but you feel like the content is pretty tight, that's when you start to boost your post to new audiences. You try and get a little bit of life, some new eyeballs on that. Again, that's going to help you build traffic, not only to your digital properties, but your brewery. I hope that helps. Glenn?
Yeah, so I would say quality matters more than anything. If you feel like you're really stretching to come up with content for your social, you might indeed be stretching and putting content out there that nobody really cares about. So take a look at other breweries that you admire that do social really well. If you've got great content, you can post 5 times a day. People will eat it up. If your content isn't so good or you're really working hard to figure out what you have to say, you probably don't want to do that 5 times every day. I would also suggest that you develop a social media calendar. That sounds like a lot of work. It doesn't have to be. Simply that means you are going to commit to publishing on a consistent basis. And you don't want to be on again, off again. You want to be a reliable, consistent presence in their social media feeds. So I would say consistency matters, and most importantly, quality matters.
Yeah, great point, Glenn. And it's a great segue also into Christina's question. She asked, social photography, thoughts on investing in a professional photographer versus iPhone pics. Now, to Glenn's previous point, quality definitely matters, but also there's the calendar content and there's the content that happens in real time. And when you have a content calendar, those things that you plan day to day, week to week, month to month, new product releases, events, different activities at the brewery, those can be calendared. And having, whether it's a professional photographer or someone who's just able to frame up the picture correctly on their phone so that it shows the real you and the real tasting room and the beer tenders behind the scenes, those are still quality photos that are coming from an iPhone, so don't discount them. But to Glenn's point, understand the difference between calendared content, days and weeks out, and then allowing yourself the freedom for real-time posting from a beer tender or an operational person, a brewer, in real time, in the moment, day of. Those don't have to be staged and and beautiful. They're not up for any creative awards. It's really just a matter of engaging your customer with real content.
Christine, I call myself a photographer. I used to use an SLR, a fancy 35 millimeter camera. I now shoot photography and video for clients on a regular basis with a Google Pixel. The technology is through the roof. It's affordable, and I follow you, Scott. The authentic photography has value, but you've seen the breweries that invest, and I don't necessarily mean a professional photographer was the term that you use. You don't have to spend money to hire a professional, but there is certainly a difference between somebody who knows how to get a super fantastic picture out of a camera and somebody who just knows how to snap a picture. So there is a difference. There is value in those, luscious beer photos and pairing photos with food and lifestyle photos of people at your brewery. That it does take a talent, a certain skill set to be able to get that. And I'm all about that. I love that. I think there's value in it. And again, I think with the iPhone technology, the Android, the Google Pixel specifically, it's incredible the quality of visual content you can get out of those. Great question, Christina. Okay, can I share my screen real quick here? Somebody asked about the brand building blocks, so I will share that with you. They look like this. Please feel free to. Do you guys see that? Scott, do you see that?
No, but I can stop sharing my screen if that helps.
All right, let's try that again. Share screen. Here we go. Is it up? Do we see that, Scott?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Okay. Please take a screen grab of this. Let me just get my... so this is an exercise you can do on your own. Feel free to call me up. I can walk you through this as well. As a team exercise, I can facilitate this. That's what you want to work on. If you answer all those questions, I left that one off at the end. That's your visual identity. That happens after you figured out all the other stuff. You'll be well on your way to differentiating your brewery and creating a consistent voice and look and feel. So go ahead and grab that, guys.
You can tell that Glenn's a designer. His slides are much prettier than mine. Hey, we've got a couple more questions and a couple more minutes.
Ryan Duff, New York State. Yep, right. Go New York. Think New York, drink New York.
From John, we had a great comment about framing the photos. Thank you for that, John. Everybody will benefit.
Yeah.
Ryan had asked the question about best practices for marketing content effectiveness and tracking beyond the simple measures. Good question, Ryan. What we would suggest, and it can go as deep as you want, the simple measures, as you put it, still takes some time to set up. And it's not a given. If we're talking about Google Analytics and Google ranking, search engine ranking, if we've got Google Console set up and Google AdWords, all of those should be linked and connected to your digital properties, whether that's your website or landing pages or even social efforts to a certain extent. And once you have that, if that's the simple measures that you're talking about, it's very straightforward to get that reporting and see your performance against baseline on a time base, whether that's month to month or across a season. Now, beyond those simple ones, we can, of course, take a look at primary research with your customers. Have you ever done a focus group? We're not talking all sciencey. We're really just talking about, have you asked the people at your bar, hey, well, what do you think about our efforts? Have you been to our website? Are you engaged in social? These are the people who are friends and fans of yours already, and they're probably the most likely to give you honest feedback on it. because they've already invested in time with you. They're invested emotionally with the brand. So ask them. And then there are a number of different ways, service-wise, that you can listen to see how your messages are landing, not only with customers, but landing in the context of your competition. Again, we talked about some of the social tools like Sprout Social or Hootsuite, which are paid services. Glenn, would you have any additions to that?
I was just going to share a quick screenshot of some analytics that I use for a brewery client, just to show you what we measure.
And there are a number of different ways that you can audit your own efforts. We suggest to do this on a quarterly basis, where you really just take a look at those priority marketing tactics like website, digital, social, public relations, your COVID response, online reporting, and then compare yours objectively to your competitors. That's going to help you identify niches and really stories that you can go after and own. Glenn?
Yeah, this is a little bit rudimentary, but just a very simple way to track. This is for Facebook and Instagram. This is the date that we posted, how many likes we got, how many comments we got, how many hashtags, likes, and comments we got, how many comment replies, DMs, accounts followed that we followed, that's us engaging, story post, feed post, and then the number of followers, interactions, reach, impressions, web clicks, and profile visits. Again, it's just a spreadsheet, nothing fancy here, but it's simply a matter of if we're going to invest our time in social media, let's put something in there to measure it.
Yeah, that's great tracking, Glenn. And we've got some good conversations between John and Allie and the group. Great suggestions, folks. Instagram, Facebook, and other social channels have really robust tools to talk about engagement with particular content. Great indicators, key performance indicators of whether or not your messages are landing.
Yeah, Allie, good point. Instagram allows you to see the insights, which show everything from interactions with a post to when your followers are online, right? The social media, it can be intimidating. It's really deep. You can really dial in on it. Don't let that make your head explode. Measure what you can. What I just showed you is again, somewhat rudimentary, but also know that if you invest your time in it, you can get so much data out of your platforms, and there are also apps that can help you measure even more. I think most breweries don't get into it that far, and I think that's okay. But again, it depends on what what you want to get out of it, what your goals are.
Yeah, and those tools being available definitely help when you're looking to spend more money against it. So once you stop being organic and start looking towards paid promotions, that's when you really want to have at least a rudimentary, as Glenn said, idea of how your messages are landing, so you're not spending good money after bad.
It is 12:14. That may be the end of the show, Scott.
Glenn, you nailed it. Appreciate you.
You're awesome. Thank you all for being here. I enjoyed it.
Cheers, folks.
Yep. Go ahead, Scott.
Have a nice evening.
Yeah, if I can help with anything, just give me a shout. Thank you, John. Tracking is crucial. All right. I think Andrew may be coming back.